Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Health Babes podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Becky Campbell with Dr. Crystal Hone. Today we have Angelo Keely on. He is the founder of Kion. We're going to be talking all about amino acids, but he has a very interesting personal story. So, can you kind of tell us your story and how you got into this whole supplement world?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Becky and Dr. Crystal. I'm excited to be here with you. I love
Yeah.
this subject, and to be with people as educated as yourselves to talk about it is just we can go that much more, I think, into nuance that can be helpful for people. Yeah, so my story is I'd say it's pretty unique.
Mhm.
Um, it started off by being born into a family that was very into natural health. So my parents actually had a natural health food store and had a natural health food restaurant. My dad had been in the supplement business, importing botanicals, things like chamomile and echinacea and ginseng, like in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I was born at home. I didn't get a birth certificate until I was like 7, until I actually had to go to like first grade.
Mhm.
Didn't get a haircut, like very hippie, natural
Yeah.
food. Like it was crunchy outside of Austin, Texas.
Love
And yeah, so it's like I think like many of us, when you're raised in a family, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you even know. It's like you're just kind of given these beliefs
it.
and these
Mhm.
values, and that's what your family does. And I feel lucky that that was part of, the fabric of like what we believed in and cared about. And as I started to get older, like all children, you go through adolescence, but probably for me and my family, we were, my parents are entrepreneurs. They're pretty bold, more
Mhm.
eccentric types. And so it's like I unfortunately or fortunately had to learn all my lessons like on my own. I couldn't like listen, to what someone else told me. And I was like sharp and I was good in school, but once it got to high school, I just experimented a lot, and I became much
Mhm.
more motivated by social dynamics and by experimenting with drugs and just like really pushing the boundaries. And when I was 16 and a half, it was actually the first day of summer after my sophomore year of high school. I took too much LSD. It was not the first time I'd done this drug, but took too much. And I had, I don't, today maybe they'd be like I did like some plant medicine journey and I had a
Yeah.
breakthrough, an ego
Yeah.
death, but I just had a really bad trip and
Mhm.
basically had a psychotic break and was terrified and scared. And I unfortunately was in not a great neighborhood with other people that are much more, I guess, just hardcore than me,
Yeah.
and I was annoying or bothersome to them, and I unintentionally got provoked this fight situation where
Okay.
I got stabbed twice in the back, very deep and significant to where they had to do emergency abdominal surgery later. I have a huge scar down my abdomen, and I got stabbed in the knee, and my patellar tendon was entirely severed, had to be
Wow.
reattached. And then I was beaten to, not to a pulp, but when I woke up several days later in the hospital, I was entirely black and blue, like I had been beaten with like
Wow.
baseball bats. So the combination, of like obviously the physical trauma, the emotional and psychological trauma, I think just from having a bad trip is enough.
Yeah.
But when it's combined with
Yeah.
that, it was like the biggest dose of adulthood I think that
Yeah.
a 16 and a half year old could get. And
Mhm.
it also just put me in this position where I think I'd always been pretty healthy and
Mhm.
strong and could do, athletics and like could just do things. And suddenly I was weak
Yeah.
and I was fragile and I had to rebuild my body. I couldn't walk and, all my
Wow.
muscle wasted away and I was just weak.
Mhm.
And, that was the beginning of, I think, where my health journey, not like the health journey of my parents and the thing I was brought up in, but like what do I really care about and what do I really want and what's going to help me to be um, just healthy and happy and like functional in the world. And so that, luckily I was in an environment that, had opportunities to learn a lot more about nutrition and about functional fitness and alternative therapies like cold and hot therapies and acupuncture and going to the chiropractor and getting
Yeah.
psychotherapy. And, it was a really, yeah, so that was the beginning of my journey. I'm now 40, so I've been on that for 24 years. But that is honestly one of the moments too where protein became really important to me again.
Okay.
So as a child, my parents had um, we were actually pescatarians. So
Mm-hmm.
we largely ate a vegetarian diet, but we ate fish. And
Mm-hmm.
my parents knew though that protein was really important. So we actually talked about, I as like a 5-year-old knew if we weren't eating like fish with this meal, I had to be thinking about combining like beans and rice or certain types
Okay.
of
Mhm.
legumes and grains in order to get a complete protein. And my mom was big into amino acids. So she
Okay.
actually was a master swimmer and would take essential amino acids and she would give them to me. And so
Very
it was
cool.
something that I'd always known about. But in my healing process, suddenly I was like, wow, I really need to consume more protein if I want to heal these parts of my body, if I want to have a healthier, emotional regulation, and if I want to just be able to build more lean muscle so I can get back to like being active and be a vibrant young person. So I carried that with me, but without going through all the rest of my journey that took me overseas for several years and a lot of different professional paths I went down. In 2017, I found myself, I guess, just kind of maybe starting the company that like my parents would have been, my 5-year-old parents would have been proud of, which
Yeah.
is one focused really around protein and amino acid nutrition and some other key supplements, but that really being the foundation of like, what are the essentials that can help us be vibrant day in and day out today so that like
Yeah.
my life today can be awesome, but also I can live longer and live better through these core nutritional supplements.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that journey has been awesome because it's been something that was a passion of mine became I got to become more of an expert in it and to
Mm-hmm.
really
Yeah.
get to know personally some of the leading researchers in the field and to read in depth the research and to be someone who can help synthesize that information and bring it to more audiences and really help them understand like what the heck is protein actually,
Yeah.
Mhm.
what are amino acids, what does this do in our body, why does it matter, what are the right types and kinds, and how can we be more knowledgeable as just independent healthy individuals without having to read hundreds of papers.
I know, right? Break it down easily for people.
Yeah.
So, like you just said, for people that don't know, like what are amino acids and what does it do in the body? Like, why are they essential? Why do we need to be taking them?
So amino acids, in like kind of the shortest summary, they're actually the little building blocks of protein. So
Hmm.
protein that exists in our bodies or in the foods we eat and throughout nature, they're made up of these little building blocks called amino acids. Some of them are essential and some of them are non-essential. I'll get into that maybe like a little bit later because I
Yeah.
think that also just to help us to understand what is protein.
Hmm.
Like I think
Mhm.
all of us get told like, oh, we should eat more protein and you want to
Right.
eat this amount of protein, but like why? What is
Yeah.
it? And a helpful clarifying point is I think just to show how it's different from the other two macronutrients, which are carbohydrates and fat. The reason why we eat carbohydrates and fat is for fuel.
Hmm.
So if you equate your body to like a house, you maybe buy electricity from the power grid, or you can have solar panels, or if your energy went out, you could burn gas to a generator, to power your house. That's what carbohydrates and fat are primarily. When we consume them, they get broken down and converted into ATP, our natural energy source, and we burn them. Protein is fundamentally different. It can be used for that, but that's not why our body really craves it and wants it and what we use it for. It's more like if we were trying to fix our house. So
Hmm.
let's
Mhm.
say our water heater broke and we need to repair it, or we need to replace it altogether, or our bathroom, and maybe for more vain reasons, which can also be for protein, like our bathroom is kind of outdated and we want to update it, we want to remodel it, like I gotta change the tile and
Yeah.
update the paint and do
The
you know
new
do the do
grout,
the,
all the
do the
things.
bathtub, the grout, all that stuff, right? And similarly, if we want to change our body physically, actually change the structure of it, it's through protein. So why and how does that work? Well, when we all of our body that's physical, over half of it is made up of proteins. Well, half of the body is like liquid, which is a very common kind of cliche thing to know about. Like over half of our body is water. Of the part that's physical, like solid mass that you could hit, right,
Mhm.
touch and like feel, um, over half of that is made up of proteins. So that includes everything from your lean muscle, which many people are familiar with, to also all of your vital organs, your liver, your kidneys, your heart, your spleen, to things like your skin, your hair, your nails. But even things that are a bit more, maybe we wouldn't assume they're actually based up from proteins, things like enzymes,
Mhm.
hormones, and even
Yeah.
our neurotransmitters. So the chemicals in our brain through which we experience emotions are the metabolites of protein. So all the stuff in our body is made up of proteins. And the way that proteins function, kind of again, similar to our house, is like eventually the water heater breaks. It doesn't just
Mhm.
last forever. So if I just, look at my skin and think about it, it's made up of all these millions of proteins. Well, each one of those little individual proteins at some point isn't as functional as it used to be. It's old in its own context. And when that protein is not as functional or old, it actually breaks down. And when it breaks apart in my body, what you notice is, oh, it's made up of these 20 little different amino acids. Those amino acids basically get released. And some of them are so old and not useful, you just pee them out. They get converted into
Mhm.
urea and you pee them out. But some are still good enough to reuse. So maybe going back to the bathroom example, it's like actually the tile's kind of cool. Like I actually want to keep the
Mhm.
tile, but like all the sheetrock's it's got mold in it. We got to rip it out. We got to replace the bathtub, etc. Similarly, some of these amino acids are still good and can be reused. But what's obvious is that some I've peed out. So how do I get new amino acids
Mhm.
to come together to rebuild this protein in my skin, to rebuild my skin tissue, my heart tissue, to make new hair, to make new muscle? That is why we eat protein. When we eat protein through food or through supplementation, we digest it, we break it apart into the little amino acids, it goes into our blood, and it supplies our body with these raw materials of amino acids to rebuild all the proteins in our body.
Yeah.
So once you see that, you're like, whoa, like I actually get
Yeah.
why doctors and nutritionists and all these experts are like, you got to eat more
Eat your
protein because
protein.
Yeah.
eat your protein.
Yeah.
Like it's that important. And so amino acids are this, they're the building blocks of those proteins.
Okay. Yeah.
Such a good explanation.
Yeah, that was great. We love our good analogy when
Yeah.
it comes to that. Makes it
So,
easier for people to
how do
understand.
we get amino acids in our diet?
So I mean the primary way that we get these amino acids is through whole food proteins.
Hmm.
And that could be plants. Things like grains and legumes tend to have more protein in it than, say, like fruits
Right.
and
Mhm.
vegetables and things like that. But animal proteins tend to be the richest in them, and that can be eggs, all different types of dairy, and meat. So
Mhm.
chicken, beef, fish, etc. That is where you get amino acids typically. Um, that said, this is maybe a good point to clarify the difference between essential amino acids and
Mhm.
the non-essential. So in a protein that we eat, whether it's rice, beans, or chicken, those proteins are actually not all the same. The protein that is part of a rice protein is different than the protein that's in a say chicken protein.
Hmm.
And what the difference is that the amount of different amino acids is actually different. So there's actually 20 of these dietary amino acids. And in whole food, you'll have a combination of which ones are present and how much. So the really important thing to note is that 9 of them are essential and 11 of them are non-essential. And what makes those 9 essential ones so important is that your body can't make them.
Mhm.
We actually have like we're a factory in a sense where if you put in those core 9 essential amino acids, you can make the other 11. That doesn't mean you'd want to force your body to do it. Like you will utilize the non-essential amino acids, but you really need those core 9. So when you're evaluating protein sources, you really want proteins that have all 9 in sufficient amounts together to make this thing called a complete protein, meaning it has all 9. But here's the really big point about essential amino acids that I think is most often overlooked by really almost everyone. And this even includes
Hmm.
doctors, nutritionists, and people maybe you see on Instagram, et cetera. The essential amino acids are not only the core building blocks of these proteins for your body and the ones that you have to eat, they're also the active components. So not only are the essential amino acids building blocks, like say new tile
Hmm.
for the bathroom, they play this messenger role. They actually tell the body to build new proteins. So think
Mm-hmm.
about it. It's actually the guy you hire to put in the tile, or the general contractor that's like overseeing the project, that's like getting people to do the work. Actually, it's not just the raw materials. And in many studies that we've been able to show that the essential amino acids create all of the new protein synthesis. They stimulate all of the protein synthesis. Non-essential amino acids do not. They don't stimulate anything. They
Mm.
can be used as a building block to build a new protein, but they don't have this chemical messenger profile. They don't actually like generate the work, create the work. So that's another reason why you really want to know about these essential amino acids and be thinking about consuming them in your diet, because not only are they this key thing you can't get on their own, but they perform this messenger role that is of the same sort as what you get from like resistance exercise. Now, it's not as powerful as that, but it actually does tell your body to build new proteins.
Yeah. And like, for example, like me, I try to focus on getting 130 for me, 130 grams of protein a day dietary, and mostly animal based. I mean, I know I get some from the different plants and things that I eat too, but or legumes and things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to aminos, like someone like me or a listener, right?
Hmm.
How much should they be taking a day, especially with the excretion that you're talking about? Our body excretes a lot of it with what we get from our diets. Can you walk through someone who's just thinking about that as you're talking about this right now?
Yeah. So I'm going to share a little bit more information about different types of protein sources and how to
Okay.
eat protein and why it matters, because I
Yeah.
think it's helpful to understand the kind of role that that like meat can play
Yeah.
versus a protein powder versus an essential amino acid
Love
supplement,
that. Okay. Yeah.
because they're distinctly different. Even a
Hmm.
protein powder is very different than a
Hmm.
whole food protein. And I think that's often something very much overlooked, but it's like it's very clear through the research. So
Yeah.
one of the most important things about protein's role to stimulate, or essential amino acids role to stimulate new protein synthesis, to basically, when you consume it, to tell your body, hey, rebuild old skin tissue, rebuild new muscle, replace old proteins with new ones, is how much essential amino acids is in that protein, how quickly can it be digested and accessible is it, and how quickly does it hit my bloodstream and hit these peak concentrations. Because when you get a lot of the essential amino acids all at once in your blood, what happens is it tells the body build new proteins. It stimulates this protein synthesis. So if you eat 30 grams of beef protein, it stimulates the same amount of muscle protein synthesis as 70 grams of beef protein if you ate that beef protein as part of a mixed meal.
Mm.
So less than half the amount of beef is required to stimulate the same amount of muscle protein synthesis if consumed on its own. Why is that? That's because the beef, when it's not mixed with other carbohydrates and fat and all these other sources, it digests more on its own, and those essential amino acids become more available in a higher peak concentration more quickly to the blood. Now, that doesn't mean you should like only eat your meat only
Yeah.
on its own, right? Because it doesn't mean it's like the only way or
Right.
reason in which you're going to stimulate protein synthesis. If you're exercising or doing resistance training, that all will do it as well. But it's pretty, I think that's mind blowing for some people. Like protein is not all equal, even the way in which you eat it is different. Then, if you were to compare a whey protein isolate to that lean beef protein, the same amount of whey protein will stimulate 3 times as much muscle protein synthesis as that beef. So when
Mhm.
people maybe say like, why are you doing supplementations? Why are you taking this protein powder? You don't need that. Like, just eat whole food. Well, they are different. They're fundamentally
Mhm.
different. The whey protein isolate will stimulate a lot more protein synthesis gram for gram, 3 times the amount as that whole food protein. And again, why is that? With a whey protein isolate, you stripped out all of the carbs and the fat. It's an isolated protein source. It's highly digestible. It's also higher in some certain amino acids. It's a little bit higher in leucine and the BCAAs. So it stimulates this even greater response in the body. So even if you're just saying, I'm trying to eat 130 grams of protein per day, like where you get that
Right.
protein and how you eat it will have greater impact depending on what it is. And so I think that's just kind of, an important thing to acknowledge. Then, if you compare the whey protein isolate to an essential amino acid supplement, you need specific proportions. It needs to have all 9. It needs to have higher amount. It needs to be leucine enriched, etc. Those amino acids will stimulate 3 times the amount of muscle protein synthesis as the whey protein powder. So
Wow.
the degrees of impact are so much greater the more concentrated the essential amino acids are, and the less you have of other things, and the more bioavailable and immediately digestible and all of it is. And it's all because the essential amino acids can hit the blood so much more quickly and stimulate so much more protein synthesis. So it's not kind of like these things are not equal. They have much greater or lesser impacts. And now getting to, well, I eat 130 grams of protein per day. Where does this fit in? Should I be
Yeah.
taking this? Why? How does it fit? Here's what I'd say. All of that data that I just shared, first I'm going to go the context for aging, was for young adults, meaning people in their 20s. At the age of 30, we begin a process in which our ability to digest protein becomes reduced. And our sensitivity to the amino acids in that protein is also reduced. Like the amino acids don't generate or stimulate as much muscle protein synthesis as they used to. And every decade after that, it gets progressively worse. So as I quoted earlier, the studies have shown that essential amino acids stimulate 3 times the amount of protein synthesis as the whey protein powder. In 60-year-old women, it's over 6 times the amount. The essential amino acids are way more impactful than the whey protein isolate. And that's because as we age, our ability to, again, to digest the protein and our sensitivity to those amino acids is reduced. And an essential amino acid supplement can overcome that and be way more potent and powerful for promoting this protein synthesis. So 130 grams of protein for a 25-year-old is very different than 120 grams of protein in a 60-year-old. They are not
Wow.
they're not the same. They're just different because the way that our bodies utilize it, etc. So I think what I would then as I kind of start to give you ideas like, well, then how do I think about this in a
Yeah.
practical way? Eating protein in naturally occurring, good quality whole food in a meal, right? With vegetables and fruits and, ideally with other people that you love and like having healthy meals throughout the day and feeling like it nurtures you, like that's the foundation, that's the base. Then the question is, if I'm going to add in additional ways to hit these higher protein intakes, like I'm going to try to fit in like a protein shake, then the question is, well, what's the most efficient way to get that? An essential amino acid supplement is going to be much more efficient than just having a scoop of protein powder.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's going to be way more efficient than trying to just eat some beef jerky,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's going to be that much more efficient than having having a little mini salad with some beef, right? Like it's going to be by far more efficient and effective. So I think the thinking is like, if I eat whatever the meal cadence that makes sense for you, 2 meals a day, 3, 4 meals a day that are whole food and mixed and with different good nutrients in it, like what's that base give me? And then if I'm trying to hit these higher daily protein requirements, what's the most efficient, effective way to get there? And what you're going to see is that whey protein isolate powder is definitely more effective than trying to just eat some beef jerky. And an essential amino acid supplement is going to be even that much greater than that. So I think adding it in these key moments. It could be first thing in the morning, it could be during a snack period. Um, it's a whole nother, I think, paradigm around exercise and around weight loss where it's
Mhm.
extremely efficient. So
Yeah.
it could be before, during, or after you exercise.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's kind of how to think about it. It's one more tool similar to a high protein snack or similar to a protein powder that is just a lot more effective than those options.
So would you say, let's say you wanted to do the protein powder and the amino acids, would you say you're eating and then maybe do the protein as a snack and then maybe doing the amino acids based around your workout? You're going to the gym. Like, how would you work that in with working out? Like, when's the
Yeah.
ideal time to take an amino acid supplement,
Mhm.
with the gym?
With the gym. Yeah. So first of all, I just say I think that like most things in health, the most important thing is consistency and adherence.
Yeah.
So we can make up like the most ideal, perfect plan about I'm going to do this, like blah, blah, blah. Like, and if you don't
Just
do it,
take them.
it doesn't really matter. So I think the most important thing I would say is um, adding essential amino acids as a daily supplement and just taking it once a day is the best place to start. And that could be first thing in the morning. It could be in replacement of a protein shake. It could be honestly, which is, I don't want to make it too complicated, but even taking it with a meal
Hmm.
enhances the utilization of the protein in that meal. Because as I described, like when you eat the meat in a meal, it doesn't actually stimulate that much protein synthesis. But if you consume the essential amino acids at the same time, it stimulates this new bout of protein synthesis and it will better utilize the protein in the meal itself to actually replace more proteins throughout the body. So if that's the best thing for you, like I like drinking it with lunch, like that's fine too. As it gets to exercise,
Hmm.
with exercise specifically, when you combine the protein synthesis that gets stimulated from the consumption of the amino acids themselves with the stimulation that happens from the exercise, it has a multiplying effect. They increase it even greater. If
Wow.
you want to get the most bang for your buck, consuming essential amino acids before you exercise will stimulate the most amount of new protein synthesis, meaning, kind of functionally, you replace the most amount of muscle fibers with new, more functional fibers. You could improve strength most likely more. Like you'll just get the most bang for your buck out of it. It'll also has the potential to reduce muscle fatigue in the
Hmm.
workout itself, to increase your energy levels, etc., while also improving your recovery. If you take the essential amino acids while you exercise or after, they're still going to have great benefit. They're still going to improve. It's still going to multiply the effect of the exercise itself to increase the amount of total protein synthesis, and it's going to improve recovery, but not as much as if you had taken it before. That
Yeah,
said,
I
if
do
you
it
if you like taking it,
during.
yeah, if you
Hmm.
like doing it during, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Like it's not, none of these options are bad. They're all good, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If
And
you're
if you
getting them
like
in.
doing it during, it's awesome. The other thing is essential amino acids. Um, they improve the tonicity of the water, meaning if you're consuming them as like a mixed, fruit flavor type beverage,
Yeah.
they improve the tonicity of the water, meaning they improve the hydration effects. What makes a beverage hydrating or not is how it changes the tonicity of the water to mix with your blood so that it passes through the small intestine more easily. So adding essential amino acids to water is an improvement to the hydration of that water itself, similar to adding electrolytes or to adding glucose. So it's also really good for that. Like you're getting the hydrating benefits if you consume it while you exercise as well.
Hmm. To be honest, like before I was introduced to your brand, I wasn't taking aminos, and it has been night and day difference with the impacts of muscle recovery. That right there, me getting through heavier workouts, my energy, and I was like, I'm gonna give it a whirl, right? Because I've never taken it, and I've always been into health. I've known about them, but it's just something that I didn't do, right? And so I really appreciate them because it's been a game changer for me in my fitness journey and everything since I've been doing them.
I love hearing that. And that's pretty remarkable for someone as yourself who is knowledgeable, has
Yeah.
tried a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's like if you do something, you can actually notice a difference. Like it's kind of like a wow moment.
Right. I'm like,
Yeah.
where have I been? Why haven't I
Yeah.
been doing this? So many people that I respect and love and is knowledgeable in these areas, like take them, and I just haven't done it. So anyways, I just wanted to say that because I've been feeling all those things. What about the benefits other than caffeine? Like most people get an energy boost. Can you talk a little bit about that from the
Yeah. And just to clarify, depending on which amino acid product you get, they may or may not have caffeine. Like my brand, our company, we don't have any caffeine in it. It's
right?
just it's just pure essential amino acids in the
Mhm.
ideal ratios as the scientific community has established over, hundreds of research studies. What caffeine does is, and we also have a coffee in my company, right? So I'm not
Mhm.
I'm not anti-caffeine. I like caffeine, but
Me
caffeine
too.
actually blocks certain receptors in the brain,
Mhm.
and in doing that, it kind of I mean, it's been proven in human outcome studies to improve cognition, improve performance, exercise performance, et cetera, at higher doses. But it's more like it's blocking pathways to create certain opportunities within your mind. With
Mhm.
essential amino acids, it literally is improving it's improving energy production. So amino acids are these building blocks, right, of new proteins. The essential amino acids are these chemical messengers that tell the body to build new proteins. But certain amino acids, particularly leucine and the other two branched chain amino acids, actually facilitate energy production at the mitochondria of the cell. So you need these amino acids to support energy production. And that is why when you exercise, you actually you oxidize a lot more of these amino acids than you do at rest because you're using your muscles a lot more. You're not burning them like a fuel source, right? Like you do with like carbohydrates or fat. I mean,
Yeah.
you do burn, I think it's about 8% of your energy comes from an exercise, but you oxidize way more of them when you exercise because you're using them to literally facilitate the production of ATP at the
Very.
level of the mitochondria. So what happens is when you're exercising, you're using more of them. And when you start to like oxidize more of them, the levels of them change in your blood. And there's something called the central fatigue hypothesis, which is that you're oxidizing so much more of the leucine for this ATP production and for just the support of the muscles that the levels of leucine relative to tryptophan change in the blood. And as we have a blood-brain barrier, more of the tryptophan gets into the brain. And tryptophan is the precursor of 5-HTP, which is the precursor of serotonin, which contributes to the sense of like more like slow, lazy softness, right? So if you're trying to formulate an ideal sleep formula, you have tons of tryptophan, right?
Yeah.
If you want someone to feel like much more relaxed and soft, right? But if you're trying to maintain more alertness and more mood, you would want to increase that amount of leucine. And so I think with exercise, that's why particularly people find that consuming essential amino acids that are leucine enriched help overall just give you more energy and motivation in the workout. But going back to kind of something I just mentioned briefly earlier, all of our neurotransmitters are these metabolites
Yeah.
of amino acids. So if just in general you're not consuming enough protein or you're not consuming essential amino acids via that protein on a consistent enough basis throughout the day, you could potentially just be experiencing more fatigue and mood irregularity than you would if you had more consistent inputs of these essential amino acids, either via protein or via a supplement.
Yeah. What
So
about, go ahead, Beck.
I was going to ask, like, what about collagen?
Yeah.
Back in the day, I used to take the branched chain amino acid supplements, the BCAAs. I think that was pretty big in like the workout world for a while. So what about like what we're talking about is different from that? And also, what are your thoughts on collagen?
So this is a really good question, and it's important to nuance because I think someone who listens to this conversation, they might immediately go out and like look for aminos, and they
Yeah,
might see the BCAA thing and be like, is
Yeah.
that the right thing? And
for
it's kind
sure.
of hard to sort through. Yeah. So BCAA, and I even mentioned them earlier, stands for branched chain amino acids, and they are 3 of the 9 essential amino acids. So think of them as a subcategory of essential amino acids. And of the essential amino acids, they are very important. So if you look at the back of the label of like Kion aminos,
Mhm.
you're going to see like there's the most of them, and lysine.
Mm-hmm.
Those 4 are very key. Um, and earlier research, right? If you could think about science, right? It's constantly kind of iterating on itself. We're doing studies, we're having an observation, a new group is testing it, they're studying more and more. Some of the earliest observations were, wow, these branched chain amino acids are really important. They seem to be stimulating the protein synthesis. And business and marketing, took those observations and they took it, they went and ran with it, right? And they started to build products around it. What has been uncovered in the last 20 years, and it's very clear, there's not much like disagreement around this. There's like the International Society of Sports Nutrition has a meta-analysis on this going back to 2017 even, that just shows that branched chain amino acids on their own do not stimulate protein synthesis. They
Mhm.
create this impulse, this kind of like spike to want to do it. But if you don't have the other 6 essential amino acids, nothing happens. It just crashes and goes away. So in short, they're a waste of money. Like
Okay.
just don't waste your money on them. If you combine them with certain other types of more deficient protein sources and stack them on top of protein powders, like there's other things that could potentially make them worth it. But it's like if you're going to buy an amino supplement, just buy essential amino acids, because the branched chain amino acids, it's been shown now repeatedly that they're not anabolic.
Yeah.
So um, what about collagen though? Collagen is quite different. It's not even in the same category of this really. So collagen is a unique type of protein source that comes oftentimes from animals. And it sounds like this new thing, but it's basically gelatin. Collagen and
Mhm.
gelatin are like the same thing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
hydrolyzed form of it. And the reason that it's unique is that it's not a complete protein. So it doesn't have all the essential amino acids in a sufficient amount to stimulate protein synthesis. So it's not going to work like whey protein does. It's not going to work at all like essential amino acids do. But what it does have is it has very high levels of hydroxyproline, proline, and glycine, which are three
Mhm.
non-essential amino acids that support the production of collagen in our bodies. And initially, like where this research came from is like the idea was like, well, maybe if we took collagen from an animal's body and we consumed it, then it would help us build our own collagen in our body, which goes into our skin and our nails and our hair and our joints. And what we've been able to show through many fewer studies than like whey protein or essential amino acid studies is that, yeah, it actually does. There's some human outcome data that says that like it can improve collagen production in humans. To what degree is it worth it? I think that's really up to like the user. What I would say is that it's similar to what we talked about earlier with protein metabolism in the body. As you get older, it is harder to rebuild skin and harder to rebuild nails and joints
Yeah.
and hair and those types of things. So it's like, if it's really important for you, like in your like really important for you to just have like the most awesome hair that you can in your 70s and you're 70 years old, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, at collagen, honestly, like you might take high doses of it. Like it probably will help
Help.
because you're getting around the body's need to have to produce it on its own. If you're 30 years old, I'm like, I don't know. It seems like a waste of money to me. Um,
Mhm.
and like in the in between, you just kind of decide. What I would say though is if you consume higher amounts of protein per day and you're taking essential amino acids, is it worth it or not? I mean, like you try
Gotcha.
throwing it in and see if it works for you, but don't count it towards your daily protein intake.
Yeah.
And you'll even see if you look at the back of collagen labels, it may say 20 grams of protein, but in the percent of daily value, it's going to say 0%
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
because it's not complete.
They get you there.
Yeah.
So, what about if people really struggle to get protein or vegans, vegetarians?
hmm
How do you recommend them supplement with aminos?
So, I think it starts with just a thinking around like daily protein intake.
Yeah.
The recommended daily allowance, which is really the minimum to
Hmm.
not have like hair fall out,
Yeah.
significant skin issues, your organs don't work, is zero point 0.4 grams of protein per pound of body weight.
Hmm.
So for simple math, if you weighed 100 pounds, that'd be 40 grams of protein per day. That is very little protein. That again, that's like
Yeah.
bare minimum, right? What
Right.
I would say is I would never, I wouldn't be trying to replace that with supplementation.
Right.
Like get that through the highest quality proteins that you can get. So if you're plant-based only, it's like soy, tofu, quinoa, buckwheat. Your options become pretty limited.
Yeah.
And then there's protein combining like certain types of legumes and grains. Um, if you're vegetarian, it's much easier. I mean, dairy and
Hmm.
eggs are
Yeah.
awesome. So
Yeah.
just make sure you're getting in bare minimum 40 grams of protein from dairy and from eggs. Then when you start to go above that, and you're like, hey, I'm looking for like more vibrant health. Like I'm not just trying to survive. I'm trying
Yes.
to age really well, or I'm trying to lose fat and maintain muscle, or I want to be able to like improve physical outcomes somehow, like whether it's yoga or Pilates or running or weightlifting or whatever that is, you want to have more protein per day. And in that case, I would encourage people because it's simple to think about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight,
Yeah.
which, if you weigh 100 pounds, it's 100 grams of protein. If you weigh 150 pounds, it's 150 grams of protein. When you're going for those higher amounts per day, anyone who's done that before starts to see like, whoa, that's a lot of protein.
It
Like
really
that's a
is.
It
yeah, like that.
is.
Those are
When
some
you
big
first start.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like those are some big servings of like meat, you know? Um, and trying not to overeat, right? And trying to like combine, the right types of
Mm-hmm.
meals. I think have 3 meals a day, that fit that in. And what you'll find really quickly is like, well, I think I can kind of do like, let's say you weigh 150 pounds. I can get in 35 grams of protein in those 3 meals,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's gotten me up to 105 grams of protein per day, right? After that, trying to fit in those next 45 grams or whatever, again, if you do essential amino acids, depending on your age and your activity levels, et cetera, it could just be like a scoop or two is
Yep.
basically getting you the equivalent of that, right? If it's a whey protein isolate, it could be like half that amount, is getting you close to that. Or if you really want to count the protein perfectly, then like you can make it the full amount. But I think just thinking like eating healthy meals throughout the day and then supplementing either with the meal or at other periods with something like the amino acids is a way to think about using it. Now, if you are in a specific category, so if you were older, let's just say older, it's like older
I
could
know.
be anything from
I
over
know.
70, right? To like depending on whatever your perspective is, right? Like the more I would think about replacing something like just trying to eat a little bit more meat with taking essential amino acids. And I'm not saying
Mhm.
replace a meal. I'm just saying like for my parents who are in their 70s, I'm like just take 2 servings twice a day, every
Yeah.
day. It doesn't matter. Like just do it because they can't eat the protein literally won't do what it used to do. And the
Right.
resistance training is simply not what the resistance training does for someone like me when I'm 40. Like I just get they still should be doing it and trying to lift
Mhm.
weights and go on walks. But like when I do it, I stimulate so much more protein synthesis than they do. So it's
Yeah.
going to provide so much more benefit from them. But someone who's 20 is going to get even more out of the training than I would, right?
Yeah.
Um, Similarly, if you're in a situation where you're trying to lose weight, which I would just hope and encourage people, if you think you want to lose weight, reclarify in your mind to I want to lose fat and I want to maintain lean muscle.
Muscle.
Yes.
Because if you worship losing weight and looking at the scale, you could really quickly lose muscle, which
Hmm.
is not what you want to do. The muscle is going to help regulate your blood sugar. It's going to help you maintain higher metabolism. It's going to give you, in most cases, the toner physique that most of us are wanting. It's going to
Hmm.
help you age better, all those things. When you go into a calorie deficit by only 30%, so if in a day, let's say 2,000 calories is the amount of calories that would help me just maintain my current weight. If I cut 30%, so 600 calories per day, that will require me to consume 3 times the amount, 300% the amount of essential amino acids to maintain protein balance, to not
Yeah.
lose lean muscle. That is a lot more. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that means like a lot more. So like if you're on a weight loss journey, it's higher than just like a gram of protein per pound of body weight. You need to be eating like a lot of protein and or supplementing with something like whey protein isolate, essential amino acids, because that's the only way you're going to be able to maintain more of that lean muscle and focus on really just cutting the fat. Because you can actually lose a pound of muscle with a 750 calorie deficit, but you only lose a pound of fat with a 3,500 calorie deficit. And that's why people who do yo-yo dieting, you'll
Hmm.
find I lost 5 pounds really quick. But like, yeah, but if I lost 2 pounds of muscle and 3 pounds of fat, like that's not what my
Yeah.
goal was.
No.
I want to lose the fat. So in that case, I think taking even more of the essential amino acids makes even more sense. And then I think obviously for athletes, anyone who's really training for something, uh, the more essential amino acids and protein you can get, I mean, up to a certain limit, is just going to be better. It's going to improve your recovery. It's going to improve your performance. It's going to improve, you know, kind of everything in the athletic performance realm.
Right.
Well, can we
And
talk about your aminos? Because you have a really good product.
mhm.
So what's in your Kion aminos and why is it so good? Because it is so good.
Mhm.
Thanks. Um, it follows the science and it doesn't have anything in it that it doesn't need. I think
Right.
that's really the simplest way of saying it. So if you uh, want to create, in my mind, the ideal essential amino acid supplement, what you would do is you would go and you would look at the research. And the research is publicly available. It's science that's been done for NASA, the NIH, for senior citizen groups, for athletes. It's one of those things too, where it's like there's literally research studies on, which is not always so common, men and women at almost every age group. Like lots of studies, it's like they try to pick off the one group where they think it's going to have the most benefit, or they know it can be clear, or they can like
Yeah.
restrict the budget. So oftentimes it'll be like, like athletic performance stuff. It's like certain group of young athletic men, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, well, what does it do to women, right?
Right.
But actually, there's research that shows for all these different groups, including women of all different ages, and that formula would basically include all 9 essential amino acids,
Mm-hmm.
and it would base the formula on the essential amino acids as they exist in human skeletal muscle. So if I did a biopsy of muscle from my body, there'd be actual certain proportions of tryptophan and histidine and leucine and isoleucine. You start with those amounts, then you increase the leucine to 40%. That kind of maximizes the amount of protein synthesis that gets stimulated. You increase the other two branched chain amino acids, the isoleucine and the valine, to where they maintain their original proportions. And you increase the lysine, because the lysine can also basically inhibit or bottleneck the amount of protein synthesis. It's a limiting factor. And that's the formula. And then you basically need to be consuming at least a minimum of 3 grams, but ideally like 5 grams is a good kind of minimum dose for most people. And then if you're open to capsules, you just put that in a clean capsule format, and that's basically it. If you want to flavor it, then you could do it with, higher quality natural flavors,
Mm-hmm.
and natural sweeteners, and that's really all you need to put in it. So I think if you compare, something like Kion does to what's out there in the market, if you look at another brand and it doesn't have all 9 essential amino acids, meaning
Yeah.
it has only the branched chain 3, or there's some brands that promote this older formula, it's a MAP formula, it has only 8, like just ignore it. Like it's
Mhm.
not worth your time. Next is there a proprietary formula? Like, do they basically tell you like, yeah, there's 5 grams, but we don't tell you how much leucine or how much isoleucine? Ignore it, because
Yeah.
it's very important. Like the research is out there, it's public, like you can get it. Like you don't want to be taking something in different amounts, because it literally could not work or could create issues for you. And then after that, like there just shouldn't be a bunch of other junk in it. You don't need other weird additives. You don't need caffeine for it to work. You also don't need other amino acids. You don't need taurine or arginine or these other things. Not that those other things aren't good, right? Like caffeine has certain benefits, or taurine can have certain benefits, but you don't need it for everything that we talked about today in terms of like all of these functions and benefits. And so it's really just, I think, following the science and making it clear to people what's in the product, and not adding junk that doesn't need to be there.
It's
Yeah,
so
yours
true.
is clean because I'm a good tester. I'm sensitive. If something is not clean, I will not react well. I've never had a bad reaction. I've only felt better since taking it. So we love it.
Yeah, my favorite is the mixed berry and the lime. The lime one. That's
I
really
do the
good.
mango.
Do you like the
It's
mango?
Yes, I
flavor
love it.
flavor is one of those things where it's like I never thought it would people would be so different from each other. Like
I
Hmm.
people like that,
know.
they swear by the lime. No, I swear by watermelon. I swear by mango. Just all these different flavor profiles that, people like.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody listening too, don't forget to go to getkion.com/health babes for 20% off. Angelo, you're amazing. You are smart, buddy. I'm proud of you. You came up with great, really.
Thanks.
You explained everything so beautifully. I even learned some things. So we appreciate you so much coming on. And is there anything else you want to close with? Where can people find you? All the things.
Well, just thanks again for having me on. And I think that link is really the best place to go and to learn more about Kion. And if you have more interest in the science, et cetera, we have lots of content. We have an awesome customer support team too. You can literally call us. We
Yeah.
have people in the office right here now with me that you can talk to. They're super educated. Um, yeah, I think the last thing I just say is, I know in interviews like this, we talk about so many things and
Mhm.
we go into this nuance and this detail. And I just want to encourage people to like not worry about taking it all in and getting everything right. Like if there's just one thing from this conversation
Yeah.
that enlightened you, that inspired you, and there's one change you can make to just, have that next iterative step towards like being healthier, just take that and be
Yes.
happy with it.
Yes.
Such a
And
good
I can
point.
attest. It really is. I have felt such a big difference taking it. And Angela, we don't talk about products if we don't use it or love it. I mean, because the world is saturated with stuff. There's so many different things out there. And so we just appreciate you and coming on and talking about this stuff. So you guys, we'll put the link in the show notes too for you if you're listening and you want to get started with Kion Aminos. But thanks again for coming on.
Thank you both.
We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, if you can pop over and leave a review, that would be awesome. You can also find us over at healthbabes.com, where you can find our courses, our latest book. We also are on Instagram at The Health Babes, at Dr. Becky Campbell, or at Dr. Crystal Hone. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.